Alright, so for this next section, I want to introduce object-oriented programming. We've already been working with object-oriented programming to a certain degree, but it hasn't been directly under our control. Not the way that we should be controlling it. One thing to consider is that every one of these buttons is its own separate object in the code. It's represented by a class, and then that class is repeated. So there actually is a class called System Windows Forms Button. So a button has its own class, just like the Windows form has the System Windows Forms.form class. Now, the classes give us a lot of opportunity to go ahead and expand on the code. And to try to keep everything closer towards game development, I'm going to introduce this as we might see an actual player class in an RPG video game, for instance. So I'm going to right-click on GUI test. I'm going to go to Add and go to Class. If this option is not here, if it's grayed out, check to make sure your program is actually stopped. If the stop button is visible, click it. Alright, so I'm going to add a class, and I'm going to call it Player. You notice I did not add the .cs back to the end. It will automatically do that. So, class player. And it created class player. Inside it, we can create a couple variables like string name equals blank and string description equals blank. These are two things we might want to know about a player, the name and the description. So let's go ahead and see how we can actually use this player class. If I go back into my form, I've got all of these various spots, buttons that we've added, things that we've added. I'm going to create a couple fields for this player, or a couple buttons for this player. Or I'll just go with one button for now. Double-clicking it, adding a button, and this button will be called Test Player. We're basically testing the initial player code. Then I'll double-click on it. I'm not going to double-click yet. I will set its name to Player Test. I double-click it now, and I have player test.click. So inside of the code, I am going to use my player class that I just created, which I'll start by doing PLAY. There, it found it. This is the class we created. Now, you'll notice it just says the class, it says the name of the project, which is GUI test, and then the name of the class. Now remember I said we can put the commenting, the XML commenting above this as well. Represents one player in the game. So I put my 3 slashes to start the XML comment. And now I'm going back into my form code, and I'm going to start typing this in again, player, and now IntelliSense tells me it represents one player in the game. So before, I'll show you this as well. We had string name equals blank or equals damn. It was one of the variables we set it as before. What's actually happening here is this is the data type. This is the name, and then we set it to something. We set it to a new set of memory. Another way that this actually happens is player, which is the data type, except we created that data type, and I'll call it P1 for player 1, equals, and we can't just say it equals a string where it has the quotes on it, or it equals a number, because this is a more complex item. Instead, we're going to say it equals a new instance, but we don't have to say the word instance, it's just called an instance, of the class player. And you can see IntelliSense has already highlighted stuff. And I put the open and closing curly braces after it. I'm going to get rid of this little string line over here because it doesn't serve a purpose. Not yet, anyway. I'm going to do this again. I want to say player P2 equals new player. So now I have two player objects. But let's see about those variables we created inside of them. Remember, player has string name and string description. We should be able to see those both. We won't, but let's see. Let's see what happens. I type in P1 and I hit dot. I get a couple of functions, these weird names like equals, get hash code, get type into string. ToString we've used. Pretty much everything in .NET gets a ToString method. But we don't see name or description. And that has a lot to do with how things are visible from one scope to another. So what I'm going to do is show you how to do the scope. Normally, if I didn't define it, it assumes I meant to have the word private there, which means that it cannot be seen outside of this class. But what I really want is public. And I'm going to put that in front of both of these. Public string name, public string description. And this public does not work inside of a method. So inside of our other methods, I couldn't say public string name equals Dan. I will get an error. Invalid term, public. But I can use it at the class level. So I can say that a variable directly inside of a class is public. So let's go back into here, and instead, when I type in P1 dot, IntelliSense now comes up with name and description. So P1.name equals Dan. And I'm going to say P2.name equals Bob. Now, what I want to emphasize with this, I'm going to use a message box dot show P1.name, and then message box dot show P2.name. All right, so P1.name and P2.name. If you consider this the way we used it before, when we had string name, if we ever changed it, it meant that it was changed. There was only one instance of that. But what happens with classes is you're actually creating multiple instances of all those variables that are inside it. So name is actually repeated for every single one of these player classes. So here we have P1 and P2. They both point to two different instances. They point to two different instances in memory that each have their own strings for name and description. So what should happen is I should see a message box show up first showing Dan and then Bob, because they're two separate players. Let's try this. F5, run it. All right, test player, Dan and then Bob. All right, that's what I was hoping for. Now, what's interesting about this is that I have one variable, a P1, that I created this player variable, dot, and now I have its description. I also have its name. I could put other things in here, like integers regarding to the weight or the age. I could put things for the points or the experience level, hit points, anything that I want, or the inventory. I can have the inventory listed or the item that is equipped. There's a lot of options that I have here.